Hi everyone, welcome to another live stream from AtPace Academy. Today I'm really glad to welcome my old friend and accomplished writer, entrepreneur and CEO, Anirvan Sen. I'll just take a minute to introduce him to you. Anirvan is really experienced in the strategy and leadership segments. He's got more than 25 years of senior management experience across the four big continents. So he's worked in Europe, APAC, South Asia, Middle East and Africa. So he's very, very seasoned. He's worked with some of the largest companies, including General Electric, Stryker, AkzoNobel, Coke, the ManpowerGroup, and the list goes on. His real strength comes from his track record of leading, mentoring, and advising senior business leaders when it comes to growth, capability, mergers and acquisitions, and the transformation that happens as a consequence of that. He's worked in a number of multi-billion-dollar transformation projects, and he has mentored more than 500 plus transformation and change professionals. Over and above this, while he was doing all of this, he's founded 2 companies and written 4 books. So that is an absolute pleasure. The 2 companies that he has founded are Fifth Chrome, which is a transformation and mergers and acquisitions company, and he's got an events company called Roundtable Insights. So I'm super pleased to have him here to talk to us about what's happening in this space. And welcome, Anirvan. What a pleasure to have you back.
The pleasure is all mine, Ravi. Thanks for the invitation, and I love to have these conversations because literally, as we speak, the world needs more of insights than information that we ever did in the past. So super excited to be on today's episode.
There's a number of people who have asked me this question, and I don't think there's anybody better to answer that question than you. What are the key skills that you need to become successful or gain entry into an M&A space? So what should people be looking out for or upskilling for to be able to gain entry in that space?
So in order to get into the M&A space, there are a few tracks, right? So there is your typical banking, legal track, which is the acquisition route, corporate development and acquisition route, right? The second one is innovation. As companies get into more and more innovation, there is also going to be a need for companies to explore what others are innovating, and that's going to be your second route. And innovation, especially right now, there's a lot more digital innovation that's taking place than in the past. So innovation is going to be a second round. The third round is going to be, once you've got through a few years of HR, that's when you can actually do that switch. So HR is going to be another round. The fourth round is going to be finance. The fifth round is going to be technology. These are the conventional routes by which you can get in, right? My belief is while these conventional routes are there, some of the first skills that people need to develop, and I call it the precursor for M&A integration, is strategic thinking, and with that strategic thinking comes in the ability to visualize the future. You need to become visionary. And then how do you run it as a business? So which means your understanding needs to be multidisciplinary. Okay, not just one, right? Somebody had said, hey, if you do an MBA, it gives you a broad spectrum understanding. So that's a good, that's a great point to get started. I'm not canvassing that people should do an MBA. They would much rather work in a small startup scale up. The experience is going to be a lot more. So that's how your base has to be multidisciplinary, but also very strong financially. You need to understand, again, all of this is how to run a business, how to be an entrepreneur. That is going to be one of the skills, I would say, in M&A integration. Now, before I end this answer, I would also say that there is, in general, a recognition that M&A integration is a specialized topic, and which is why we started our own masterclass on M&A integration. There are few others which are there. I don't know if you know about deal rooms or not. They come up with a list of, I think, 6 or 7 different companies that offer M&A courses. That actually is a great start because it starts orienting your thinking towards M&A integration. So the more recognition there is of this as a separate discipline, like change management, right? Back in the 80s and 90s, there was not much of change management. People would talk about change management, and people who didn't really know what change management was all about. The same thing I would see in M&A integration. So I hope that kind of answers. I'm not saying I know all the answers, but I'm saying, again, this is my opinion.
I think you provided 2 perspectives which are quite crucial. One is the more deep functional expertise about M&A and integration, which you can gain from a masterclass.
Yeah.
And I think that's a great place to boot camp it. That's a great place to learn the basics and work. I think the second piece is really the broad knowledge across business acumen, critical thinking, conflict management, communication, cross-cultural work, which is giving you that breadth to be able to utilize the depth that you've taken from a masterclass. So I think that's truly the deep expertise and enabling skills that allow you to do that. I think you're right to say that an MBA is a great place to learn some of the more broader skills. But in the age of reskilling and in the age of, let's say, short skill spans, do you foresee that a lot of this can be learned on the go, as with short courses or with boot camps?
Absolutely. And that's why, when I shared about, doing an MBA, I said you would much rather work in a small startup or a scale up. Because from a skilling perspective, so 20th century thinking was, I get a university degree, I get to a job, and I pretty much work in that role. I get promoted as I acquire more skills in my job, right? And sometimes if the company was kind enough, they would send me for a reskilling course somewhere, right? 3-day classroom or 5-day classroom at a nice location. It's more like a perk rather than actually upskilling. And the way the employee mindset evolved is, my skilling is the responsibility of my company where I work. In the third decade of the 21st century, we are now standing at a place where that is not going to work anymore, where people need to start skilling themselves. Now, what you'll also observe, and I know you read a lot, what you'll find is majority of the large company or mid-sized companies or unicorns, you will find there's one thing which is common across the senior leaders. They are all vociferous readers, voracious readers. They absolutely take out time. They read like crazy. And reading is one of the best ways to learn new skills. When I say new skills, you start there, then you figure out ways to acquire skills. You have other places like Udemy or edX. These are the places which are again offering skilling opportunities. What's the fundamental mind shift change that is required needs to be amongst employees, because the need to reskill is absolutely there. It's a tsunami waiting to deluge industries after industries. It is going to happen. The question is, there will be employees who will be smart enough to learn and move on and reskill themselves. And then there will be employees who will say, oh my God, I've given all my life to this company and look at what the company does. Well, you know what? The company would go bust if you don't change your skills. And it is no longer company's responsibility. It is your responsibility as well to make sure that you are reskilling yourself so that you will stay relevant to what the company needs.
That's true. I think the great part about what you just said is the fact that there is a huge demand to continue to grow, continue to adapt. Now that adaptability comes from the 3 or 4 pieces that you talked about. You talk about reading, you talk about listening, watching, learning, trying, these kind of sort of phases where you start to think a lot more short term. Right now, I need to get the skills and I need to practice it right away kind of story. I know that you are a ardent mentor. How do you see the role of mentoring in all of this?
So there is going to be convergence of mentoring and facilitation and deep experiential knowledge and deep technical savviness, digital savviness, right?
Right.
So mentoring, as we knew in the past, which is the business coaching, is not going to be singular in nature. It is going to be combined, I think it was last year or the year before last, I read this book called $1 Trillion Coach, which is about Bill Campbell, right? I'm sure you've read this.
Right. It's a nice book.
It's fantastic, right? The difference between his style, Bill Campbell's style, and I know a couple of people who were very closely connected with Bill Campbell, or at least they got mentored, is that Bill was not about extracting, what's your final goal? What do you want to achieve? And trying to play a role of a therapist. He was also that strong business acumen, so he could also give you a few business options to think about, right? And I think that's going to be extremely important. Coaching on its own is, leadership coaching or business coaching on its own was important in the past, but I think now it needs to be combined with a strong business acumen going forward, right? And that is going to be the differentiator. So back to your question, that's where I see the mentoring is going to evolve. It's going to evolve on the basis of your coaching abilities, your business acumen, your digital savviness, understanding of the way the world is changed. Combining these few elements are going to drive the new age mentoring.
I think that is spot on, because one of the things that At Pace Academy does is that we have our own mentoring programs that we are enabling. So we are running this for a number of different communities on our platform. And one thing which is coming out more and more is exactly what you said. People don't want to be just asked the questions. They really want to broaden their thinking by giving them creative input, really grounded creative input, not just saying, hey, go read a book. No, it's really about what can you think about while you're reading the book that will help you move forward. And I think the second role that mentors are playing, which is also very interesting, is almost acting like accountability partners.
Correct.
You have this meeting coming up and you don't want to cut a sorry figure, so you are going to make it work. And I think that is a key part of how perspectives are coming together on our platform as well. So one of the things that you are giving today, part of this live stream, is this unique perspective. And I'm very grateful for that.
If you think of the Six Sigma days, right? So back in the General Electric days, right? So this accountability partner as well as mentoring. So as MBBs, we needed to mentor a number of black belts, right? Make sure that they go through their projects, as well as green belts, right? Now, green belts was a different story because it was more about mass education. But when it came to black belt, you needed to ensure, as in your performance was based in ensuring that you're able to mentor the black belts to achieve what they have set out, right? It's not about that kind of drove accountability on both sides. So, which is where, and the other thing, of course, that the black belts expected, hey, you should not just tell me what's good about me or bad about me, but you should also be able to tell me how can I do things differently. And I think that exemplifies what you just spoke about.
Yeah, that is so true. I think I forgot about those days when we used to do the certifications. But there in itself was a very interesting construct, which now has transitioned onto a digital plane, which is why I really like the way that you said that you need to not only have the knowledge, or you need to not only have the acumen, you need to be able to impart that using a digital medium.
Correct.
So you can amplify your reach and you can amplify the impact. So final question, Anirvan, before we wrap. Any favorite hacks or upskilling tips or just development tips that you want to give to professionals who are in this space and who want to grow into the M&A integration and transformation space?
I think that's another brilliant question from you, Ravi. I'll say a few hacks that I normally use. So the first one that I realized, so I was doing this business mentoring through a platform called ClickFunnels, right? So they are into digital marketing. And one of the things that they talk about is business hack somebody else who's already doing it. In other words, let's say if somebody's running an advisory company or a training company, just go and observe how they're doing it, right? They talk about that they had learned their own techniques through what Tony Robbins was doing. Okay, and Tony Robbins and Russell Brunson, who's the founder of ClickFunnels, are very close friends, right? So what they say is there's a difference between plagiarism and being able to take on somebody else's idea and build on it. Okay, as I forget the exact phrase, but they say great let's say creators or great artists became great by being on the shoulder of somebody else. So I don't exactly remember the phrase, but that's
great paraphrase. Yeah,
I paraphrased it, right? So the reality is, if you look at Steve Jobs, right? Steve Jobs was not the one who completely invented the concept of touch